Chapter 1. The Funeral Beginning. The small village nestled at the foot of the gray Rocky Mountains. Shrouded year-round in mist, the dirt road leading into the village was rugged. During the rainy season it turned into a swamp that swallowed footsteps. And in the dry season it was cracked and dusty, the wind carrying clouds of dirt into the sky. Strangers rarely set foot there, for the village carried a chilling legend whispered by the locals on stormy nights. The tale of the bride who died on her wedding day. The elders told that more than 100 years ago, the most beautiful girl in the region, rosy cheeks, red lips, a gentle figure, was chosen as the bride for a grand wedding. But right during the ceremony, as the bridal procession reached the village gate, fierce winds suddenly rose, drums and gongs fell silent, flowers scattered to the ground. People even heard mournful cries echoing from the cemetery behind the mountain. And when the veil was lifted, the bride collapsed, her eyes wide open in terror, blood seeping from her lips, her body already cold. The wedding turned into a funeral. From then on, whenever a wedding was held in the village, people feared the return of the ghost bride. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, a figure in a stark white wedding dress was seen drifting across the fields, long hair hanging down to cover her face. Whoever glimpsed her fell ill with strange ailments, or died without explanation. An old woman often sat at the head of the alley, her teeth nearly all gone, her eyes clouded like fog. She always repeated a single phrase in delirium: "Don't wed, don't receive, or the bride will call your name." Children would gather around her, laugh, and run away, but the adults remained silent, not daring to answer. That night, the wind howled through the crooked thatched roofs. A pale moon hung suspended, casting its dim light on the dirt road. Suddenly, dogs began to howl long and mournful, each cry stretching as if foretelling doom. In an old wooden house in the center of the village, an oil lamp flickered weakly. Inside, people were discussing preparations for an upcoming wedding. The atmosphere was heavy, silence thick, broken only by sighs and the crackling of burning wax. The old father looked at his son with worry. "Are you certain you want to marry on this day?" The young man nodded, his gaze firm but tinged with unease. The girl sitting beside him had a pale face, her trembling hands clutching her robe. Outside, the wind whistled through the cracks, carrying strange rustling sounds, as if someone were quietly circling the house. In the darkness, faintly visible beneath an ancient tree, stood a woman in a white wedding gown, her long veil touching the ground, her soulless eyes fixed unblinkingly on the house lit with lamplight, as though awaiting something. And then, from afar, came a chilling giggle, hair-raising, like an invitation from the depths of hell. Chapter 2. The Fateful Wedding. That morning, the entire village bustled with unusual excitement. People set up tables and chairs, erected an arch of green bamboo and coconut leaves. Bright red ribbons stretched across the main road, where the bridal procession would pass. The sounds of drums, gongs, and wedding horns resounded endlessly, trying to drown out the heavy air that had lingered for days. The elders of the village sat huddled on their porches, silently watching the crowd. Their clouded eyes shimmered with unease. Someone muttered softly, "Another wedding, in this month. Who knows if peace will last?" The children, however, were delighted, running and shouting around the procession. None of them noticed that the white flowers decorating the wedding gate withered in an instant, petals falling like drops of blood on the red earth. The bride sat in her chamber, her face pale beneath thick powder. Her eyes were red, her trembling hands resting on her gown. The bridesmaid tried to comfort her, fastening the veil onto her hair. Yet in the dim bronze mirror, the reflection was not hers, it was another face, pale, twisted, lips purple, faintly moving as though smiling. The bride turned in horror, but behind her was only emptiness. At the chosen hour, the procession began. Drums and gongs thundered, but suddenly, the cry of a child rang out in broad daylight. The sound lingered, echoing, with no clear source. Faces in the procession turned ashen. One nearly dropped the bridal palanquin. The leader shouted urgently, "Keep going, do not stop." They quickened their steps, pretending to ignore the unnatural sound. But the sky abruptly darkened, black clouds surging to blot out the sun. The ancestral altar candles went out by themselves, black smoke coiling upward. As the palanquin passed the ancient banyan tree, Where the ghost bride was said to appear, a gust of freezing wind swept through it. The bridal veil fluttered, covering the bride's face. Everyone felt as though an invisible hand had brushed the back of their necks. Amid the crowd, an old woman screamed, "She's back! The dead bride, she's back!" Chaos erupted, people shoving, stumbling. Some fell to the ground. Some were trampled until blood spilled. The child's cry rose again, this time so near it seemed to come from beneath their feet. The groom's face was drained of blood, yet he clenched his teeth and gripped the palanquin, leading the way. In his eyes flickered something both resolute and desperate. The groom's house doors opened, red lanterns swaying in the wind. They brought the bride inside to the pounding of drums. But no one dared look straight at her face. For behind the veil faintly appeared a grotesque smile, crooked, cold, inhuman. The air thickened as if laced with the metallic stench of blood. The candles on the ancestral altar flickered. The bride's shadow stretched unnaturally long on the wall, twisting, appearing and vanishing like something not of this world. And then, as the ceremony began, the drums and gongs abruptly ceased. Outside, a flock of black crows burst into the sky, shrieking mournfully. Joy turned in an instant into suffocating silence. All eyes fixed on the bride. Beneath the veil, her shoulders trembled, as if laughter was bubbling from deep in her throat. The bridesmaid, shaking, reached to lift the veil. But before she could touch it, the veil flew up by itself, billowing in the air, and beneath it was revealed a face, white as paper, lips dark as ink, eyes hollow as though gouged long ago. The groom's family screamed in terror. The wedding had turned into a funeral in that very fateful moment. Chapter 3. The Sudden Death. A scream resounded throughout the house, drowning out even the howling wind outside. People panicked, stumbling over one another. Some tripped over chairs. Others toppled trays of food onto the cold floor. The crash of shattering dishes echoed, but no one had the mind to notice. Every gaze was fixed on the bride's revealed face. Her skin was deathly pale, devoid of blood, as though smeared with cold ash. Her eye sockets were hollow, black as an abyss. Her bruised lips trembled, releasing a faint whisper that everyone heard. "Don't call me?" The words did not seem to come from her throat, but from somewhere far away, echoing from the depths of a grave. The bridesmaid closest to her shook violently, screamed once, and collapsed unconscious. A few men rushed forward, intending to pull the veil back over her face. But suddenly the bride's features twitched, and black blood began seeping from her empty sockets. Terrified screams erupted in succession. The groom, his face drained of color, still lunged forward to embrace the bride. He cried out, "No, she is my wife. She cannot die. She cannot." But the body in his arms was icy cold, heavy as stone. Suddenly, the bride's hand shot up, her long, rigid fingers clutching his throat. Her nails tore through flesh, fresh blood spurting out. The crowd screamed and scattered in chaos, trampling one another as they fled. The door burst open under the crush. Children wailed, women clutched their heads and ran. No one dared to look back. Inside the chamber, only the groom remained, struggling desperately with the woman he loved. Her soulless eyes seemed to devour all light, plunging the room into shadow. Suddenly she tilted her head back, mouth opening impossibly wide, as if to tear her own face apart. A ghastly scream erupted, not human, not beast, but like the wailing of centuries of tormented spirits combined. The entire house shook, the candles snuffed out. In that pitch-black moment, there came a sharp crack, the sound of bones breaking. When the flames were lit again, the groom lay lifeless on the floor, eyes rolled back, mouth agape. On his neck were 5 deep purple handprints. The bride, however, was gone. Only the blood-stained veil remained, draped across the altar, its crimson soaking slowly downward, drip by drip, into the brimming cup of wedding wine. A cold wind swept through. In the corner, someone clearly heard a giggle, long, drawn out, like something being dragged through the darkness. Chapter 4. The Horrifying Wedding Night. That night, the entire village was drowned in a deathly silence. The wedding had turned into a funeral, yet no one dared to set up an altar or hold a burial for the groom. His body was hastily left in the central hall, covered with a ragged mat, for when the men had first tried to touch the corpse, his eyes suddenly rolled open, staring wide, and black blood oozed from the corners of his mouth, sending everyone fleeing in terror. The elders trembled as they declared, "He is not truly dead, the spirit has not let go." The oil lamp flickered weakly, threatening to go out. The wind whistled through the cracks like a voice lamenting. Outside, fog from the cemetery rolled in, thick and heavy, swallowing the pale light of the moon. Amidst the suffocating air, faint footsteps suddenly echoed on the wooden floor, tock, 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 steady, advancing from the far end of the house toward the central hall. Those who remained cowered to the sides, no one daring to move. The bridal chamber door, shut since afternoon, now trembled softly, as though someone inside was trying to step out. A young girl whispered, trembling, but the bride had already vanished. The old wooden door creaked open. A blast of freezing wind swept out, extinguishing the last candle. In the suffocating darkness, they saw only a pale blur emerging slowly, a wedding gown dragging across the floor, rustling with an eerie scrape. The veil concealed her face. The bride moved silently toward the groom's body. With each step, the floor groaned, crack, crack, like breaking bones. No one dared to breathe. No one dared to move. She stopped before the corpse. Her pale hands rose, gently stroking the lifeless face. Then, before all who watched, the groom opened his eyes. His pupils, pure white, rolled in their sockets. From his throat came a hoarse, broken rasp. My bride, wedding night? The entire household shrieked and bolted, trampling each other to escape, ignoring the wails behind them. In the empty hall remained only the bride, bending down to press her lips against the stiff, cold lips of the dead man. From their mouths, black blood began to flow, spilling in streams across the floor. The stench of rot and iron filled the air, choking all breath. The wind outside rose, carrying with it the giggling of a woman, echoing across the village. That night, no one slept. All heard clearly the creaking of a bed, the rustle of a gown across the floor, and a whisper as sweet as it was terrifying. "We are husband and wife, forever?" The boldest who dared peek through the window saw the bride seated upon the wedding bed, caressing the groom's stiff corpse as though he still lived. Suddenly, her hollow eyes turned outward, staring straight at them. They fled in panic, yet the image would haunt them for the rest of their lives. That horrifying wedding night marked the beginning of an endless nightmare. And from then on, the village would sink deeper into a blood-soaked curse. Chapter 5. The Restless Corpse. The next morning, before the sun could even rise, the villagers crowded tightly around the house where the tragedy had occurred. No one dared to step inside. They stood in a circle, eyes fixed on the wooden door left slightly ajar. The wind swept through the mountain pass, carrying with it a pungent stench, reeking like rotting blood. The eldest man in the village clenched his teeth, incense trembling in his hand as he stepped in first. A few others reluctantly followed. The house was cold, as though abandoned for decades. Dim light filtering through the cracks of the door, shining down on bloodstains scattered across the floor. The wedding bed had been overturned, its once white sheets now soaked and dried, blackened blood. But the most horrifying sight was this: the groom's body was no longer there. On the floor remained only long drag marks, as if someone had pulled a corpse away during the night. A shredded piece of bridal veil lay abandoned, caked with mud and blood. The villagers turned toward the altar. Yesterday's wedding wine, spilled and dried, now bore the clear imprint of a bloody hand, small and delicate. Impossible to belong to the groom. A woman burst into sobs. Isn't it the bride's restless spirit? She hasn't found peace, she's dragging someone with her. From the corner of the house came a faint chuckle, as if someone hid in the shadows. Everyone spun around in terror. But nothing was there, only a torn piece of veil drifting in midair before dropping at their feet. That night, no one dared light wedding lamps. No drum or gong was struck. Yet at midnight, the whole village awoke to the sound of footsteps wandering through the narrow alleys. The dragging of a wedding gown rustled across the ground. One person cracked open their door just in time to see a girl in white glide past, her long hair veiling her face. In her hand, she dragged something heavy, creaking against the earth like the weight of a corpse. The cry of a child rang out somewhere in the distance, then abruptly ceased. The village dogs howled through the night, their relentless cries tearing through the thick fog. At dawn, A new grave appeared in the old cemetery. Its stone bore no name, only smears of bloody handprints. The soil was freshly turned, but no one dared dig it up. The villagers whispered among themselves that from now on, whenever there was a wedding, the ghost bride would return to claim a victim, and the dead would never rest in peace. Chapter 6. The Bloodstained Diary. After the horrifying incident, the entire village sank into a state of obsession. No one dared mention that wedding again, let alone the bride's name. Yet amidst the fear, a few curious souls still decided to dig deeper into the secret that had haunted the village for centuries. Among them was Lu, a young man, grandson of the elder long regarded as the keeper of the village's stories. That old man was known to be taciturn, muttering to himself at night, often dismissed as senile, but only Lu knew that in his crumbling chamber lay a rotting wooden chest, chained with rusted iron, buried carefully beneath the floor. That night, as lightning split the sky, Lu crept into the old man's room. The sound of rain pounding on the thatched roof masked his footsteps. Trembling, he pried up the decayed planks, dug through the damp, cold earth, and finally touched the chest. The corroded lock broke open. Inside, among torn bridal fabrics, lay a thick notebook, its leather cover moldy and stained with dried blood. As Lu opened it, a cold wind rushed against his face, nearly extinguishing the flickering oil lamp. Jagged writing appeared, ink as red as if written in blood. Year 1886. The bride of the Tran family died on her wedding day, blood soaking her white gown. Year 1902. The Lu family's bride, only 16, collapsed before the altar. Year 1920. The wedding between the Nguyen and Bui families. The bride vanished, leaving only a blood-stained veil. Year 1945. 3 weddings in 1 year all turned to funerals. Each bride disappeared from her coffin. Year 1973. A woman, 7 months pregnant, suddenly slit her own throat during the ceremony before everyone's eyes. Year 1999. The bride was strangled on her wedding night. Her body vanished, leaving behind only eerie laughter echoing in the village. On the final page, scrawled in large, trembling letters, all those brides are one. She returns, again and again, and she will never stop. Lu swallowed hard, cold sweat breaking across his skin. He was about to close the diary when suddenly, a drop of fresh blood fell onto the page. He looked up, the ceiling was empty. Yet from within the book, new lines began to appear by themselves, red ink bleeding across the paper. This year, whose turn is it? A sudden giggle sounded right behind him. Lu spun around in shock, only to see a white bridal veil hanging from the roof beam, swaying gently, dripping blood onto the floor. Chapter 7. The Haunted Wedding Dress. Rumors of the diary quickly spread throughout the village, filling everyone with dread. But what made people tremble even more was the existence of the wedding dress that many swore they had seen on cold moonlit nights, floating in the darkness, drifting without a body to wear it. After reading the diary, Lu could not sleep. He decided to go to the abandoned old house at the edge of the village, where the wedding long ago had been held. The wooden door was rotten, yielding with just a light push. Inside, dust and cobwebs covered everything, the stench of mildew thick in the air. In the dark chamber, moonlight slipped through a crack in the roof, shining down on a wooden chest. Lu slowly approached, his heart racing. The lid creaked open, and inside was a white wedding dress, yellowed with age, stained with blotches of dried blood. He barely had time to catch his breath when he felt someone standing right behind him. A cold breath brushed the back of his neck. He spun around, no one was there. But when he looked back at the chest, the dress was gone. It was standing in front of him. Yes, standing. The wedding gown held itself upright, the hem swaying as if worn by someone. Yet inside it was hollow. The veil hung down, dripping fresh blood that spattered onto the floor. A whisper rose, neither clearly male nor female. Wear it, become my bride. Lu shuddered violently, stumbling backward, but his foot caught on the chest and he fell. The gown began to move toward him, step by step, each rustle chilling in the silence. The tattered silk sleeves stretched out, ready to embrace him. Just then, a frantic voice called from outside. Lu, come out, now. He scrambled to his feet, bolting for the door, his heart pounding as if it would burst. When he turned back, the gown had vanished. Only the blood-stained veil remained, caught on the doorframe, swaying in the wind with a creaking sound that chilled the soul. That night, the villagers once again heard a lullaby echoing around the old house. Its tune haunting and seductive. Whoever wears this white gown will die beneath the full moon. Whoever dons this bloody veil shall follow me for eternity. From that night on, no one dared approach the old house again. But everyone knew the wedding dress still waited there, awaiting the next unlucky soul to wear it, to become the next bride. Chapter 8. The Abandoned Wedding House. The old house stood desolate at the edge of the village, right by the dense ancient forest. People said it was here that the bloodiest weddings in the village's history had taken place. Ever since the first bride died during her procession, the house had been abandoned, its wooden door rotted in silence, the tiled roof crumbling, and the stained walls looked as though something had seeped out from within. By day, it appeared only as a decrepit ruin, but when night fell, anyone passing by swore they could hear distant wedding drums, mingled with the clash of gongs and the wail of horns, followed by the mournful cries of women. After his encounter with the haunted dress, Lu resolved to return with two close friends to explore the house. Carrying oil lamps and knives, they stepped inside. Trembling, the old door creaked open, and a foul stench surged out, choking them. Inside, the main hall still held the decayed remnants of a wedding altar. On the wooden walls were countless scratch marks, long and deep, as if hundreds of people had once clawed and screamed together, trying to escape. In some places, the wood had been gouged through entirely, revealing patches of stained white bone beneath. The flickering oil lamp illuminated crooked, ancient wedding photos hanging on the wall. Strangely, in every picture, the groom's face had been scratched away, leaving only the bride's face, her eyes wide, white, staring straight at them. One of the three, trembling, reached out to take down a photo. But the moment he touched it, thick black blood oozed from the frame, dripping onto the floor. Panicked, they dropped it. The picture shattered, and from within rolled out a blood-stained human tooth. Footsteps echoed from the inner chamber. Talk, 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 steady. Approaching, the oil lamp sputtered. A cold wind slithered through the cracks, carrying with it a chilling whisper. Guests again, the bride is waiting. At once, from the inner room, a white figure in a tattered gown slowly stepped out. Her hem dragged across the floor with a scraping sound, her long hair hanging down to cover her face. The three froze in terror, scarcely breathing, but as the figure drew nearer, they saw clearly, beneath that curtain of hair, there was no face at all, only a hollow void, black and oozing with thick streams of blood. One of them screamed and hurled the oil lamp to the ground. Flames burst up. In that flash of light, all three saw that the four walls were hung with blood-stained bridal veils, swaying as though hundreds of resentful brides were staring at them. They bolted in panic. Behind them, laughter echoed, louder, harsher, like 100 ghostly brides chasing at once. From that day on, no one dared set foot inside the abandoned house. Yet each night, those who passed by saw the flicker of an oil lamp in the main hall, and the bride's haunting song carried into the dark. Who enters, must remain. Who steps in, becomes the bride. Chapter 9. The Bride in the Mirror. Inside the abandoned house, besides the haunted wedding dress and the rotting altar, there was another object villagers still whispered about: the ancient bridal mirror. It was said that the mirror had reflected the faces of dozens of brides before their weddings, and that every unjustly slain soul had left its trace within it. Lu decided to return once more, this time alone. He wanted to see the truth with his own eyes. That night, a crescent moon hung faintly in the sky, its pale light falling upon the ruined house shrouded in cold mist. Inside, the bridal mirror stood silently in the main hall. Its wooden frame was rotted, yet the surface gleamed with a cold brightness, as though it were polished daily. Strangely, not a speck of dust clung to it. Lu stepped closer. In the mirror, he saw his reflection, thin, pale-faced, with eyes sunken from sleepless nights. He raised a trembling hand and touched the glass. It was icy, like frozen steel. Suddenly, the reflection blurred, his own face distorted, wrinkled, and from behind his image appeared the figure of a girl in a white wedding gown. She stood motionless, hair hanging down to cover her face. Lou spun around. Behind him was nothing but emptiness. But when he looked back into the mirror, the bride was still there. And this time, she was moving closer. The figure in the mirror advanced, though the space behind him remained silent. With each step she took, the mirror thudded. Talk, 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 as if something were pounding from inside. Then suddenly, she stopped, standing directly behind him within the glass. From beneath the curtain of hair, her face slowly lifted, hollow eye sockets gaping, her mouth slashed wide to the ears, dripping with thick black blood. A grotesque grin spread, revealing sharp, jagged teeth. Lou staggered back, his heart hammering, yet the reflection did not retreat. She pressed against the mirror, bloody hands slapping hard from within, leaving smeared crimson stains across the surface. A voice rose, trembling, echoing through the chamber. You have seen me, and now, you will be the next groom? The mirror suddenly cracked, fractures spreading like a spider's web. From the fissures, fresh blood seeped out, running down to the floor. Lou screamed and bolted outside. But as he burst through the door, he heard it clearly, the shrill laughter of a woman echoing from the mirror, following him with every step. That night, the entire village heard a lullaby carried on the wind. Mirror for brides, mirror for blood, whoever looks, shall die in pain. From then on, the ancient bridal mirror was sealed away. Yet people still believed that if one accidentally glanced at it, the ghostly bride's shadow would follow them for the rest of their life. Chapter 10. The Cursed Proposal. People whispered that inside the abandoned house, aside from the blood-stained dress and the bridal mirror, there was something even more terrifying, a black silver wedding ring. It had once been used in a wedding long ago, a wedding that ended in blood and vengeance. The ring had long since disappeared, but anyone who wandered into the abandoned house at midnight could sometimes see it lying silently on the decayed altar, glowing with a pale light like a dead moon. One night, a young man from the village, arrogant and reckless, who never believed in spirits, decided to challenge the curse. He and his friends swaggered into the house, laughing boisterously. Then, amidst the whistling wind through the cracks, he saw it, the black silver ring, resting proudly on the altar. Though thick with dust, its shine was eerie, as if freshly polished. What's so scary about a wedding ring? Just a trick to frighten people, he sneered, and without hesitation slipped it onto his finger. At that very moment, everything around them froze. The wind ceased, the oil lamp guttered out. The silence was so deep that each heartbeat thundered in their ears. The young man stiffened, his face drained of color. He heard a whisper right by his ear. "You are mine, forever." The finger wearing the ring twitched, blood seeping from the cracks between flesh, staining his hand red. He screamed, trying to rip the ring off, but it tightened like claws sinking into his flesh. The harder he pulled, the deeper it dug, black smoke rising with a burning stench. His friends panicked and fled, leaving him alone to wail in despair inside the pitch-black house. The window burst open, and from outside drifted in a white figure in a tattered gown, veil trailing along the ground. Step by step, the bride advanced, talk, 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 like the march of fate. The young man trembled, retreating, but the door behind him slammed shut, locking tight. The bride's icy hand touched his face, pulling him close. From her hollow sockets she stared deep into him, her mouth twisting into a grotesque smile. "I have the ring, now I need the groom." His scream tore through the night. By morning, when the villagers gathered, they found inside the abandoned house only a shriveled corpse, eyes rolled back, mouth agape, and the black silver ring still fused tightly to his finger. From that day, no one dared touch the object again. The elders whispered that the ring was not mere adornment, but a shackle binding the realms of the living and the dead. Whoever wore it would forever become the groom of the ghost bride. Chapter 11. The Strange Man. After a series of horrifying deaths, the entire village seemed drowned in a shadow of terror. Any household with daughters of marrying age lived in fear, not daring to speak of weddings. At night, doors were bolted tight, charms hung at the entrances, yet the sound of a wedding gown dragging and eerie giggles still circled every roof. One gray, rainy afternoon, the village received a stranger. He was a thin man, clad in a tattered coarse robe, leaning on a bamboo staff. His graying hair was long and tangled, and his dark eyes seemed to hold an entire stormy sky. He entered the village in silence, asking no questions, greeting no one, walking straight toward the abandoned house at the village's edge. The villagers shuddered. An old woman exhaled sharply. Could it be, he seeks death? But strangely, as he stepped before the house, the howling wind ceased at once. The infant cries that haunted the nights fell silent. The entire space grew still, subdued as though bowed down. That evening, he was invited to the village chief's home. Sitting before the flickering oil lamp, he quietly sipped tea, then spoke in a hoarse voice. I have traveled many places, witnessed many vengeful spirits, but the bride's spirit here, it is a rare and dreadful thing. It is not one soul, but the fusion of countless resentments, merged into an immortal phantom. The entire room fell into dead silence. A young man dared to ask, "Then, is there any way to break it?" The stranger set his staff down on the ground, his deep eyes glinting with an uncanny light. Every vengeful spirit has roots. To sever this curse, one must find the first bride's grave, the one who died in the wedding 100 years ago. If her bones can be found, and a complete wedding held anew, then she may be laid to rest. But, if it fails, none in this village will survive. His words chilled every spine. That night, after all had gone to sleep, a few swore they heard steady knocks on the ground. Tock, 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 just like the tap of the man's bamboo staff. Yet when they looked outside, they saw only a white figure in a wedding gown standing motionless, while the man himself had vanished completely. Was he truly a sorcerer come to save the village, or merely another spirit wearing the guise of a man? Chapter 12. The Disturbed Grave. After the night the strange man vanished, the entire village fell into extreme confusion. His words still echoed in their minds. You must find the first grave. Yet no one knew exactly where it lay, for the cemetery behind the mountain was centuries old, overgrown with weeds. Tombstones shattered, inscriptions long erased. A group of brave men, led by Lu, decided to search. The morning sky was bleak, mist blanketing the path. The earthy scent of damp soil thickened the air. They carried shovels, oil lamps, and even talismans drawn by the village shaman. In the middle of the cemetery, they discovered a peculiar grave. The soil looked freshly turned, though it had supposedly existed for 100 years. The stone marker was split in two, its surface scarred with long claw marks. Atop the grave was a torn bridal veil, smeared with mud and stained with dried blood. The air thickened, the wind ceased, the forest fell utterly silent, as though hundreds of unseen eyes were watching. One man whispered, trembling, "Perhaps this is the first grave." They took deep breaths and drove their shovels into the earth. The soil came up heavy with each strike. Yet the deeper they dug, the stronger the stench became, putrid and suffocating. The shovel struck something solid. They frantically cleared the dirt, revealing a decayed coffin, its wood black as coal. When the lid was pried open, all were struck dumb. Inside was emptiness, no body at all, only a blood-soaked bridal veil, tightly wrapped around a thick bundle of black hair. At that instant, the wind howled violently. Thunder cracked across the sky. The entire cemetery echoed with sinister giggles, spreading from grave to grave, as though hundreds of ghost brides were rising all at once. A white figure suddenly appeared on the distant hill, her wedding gown whipping in the storm, a wilted bouquet in hand. She stood motionless, yet her hollow eyes fixed directly upon the men. One villager dropped his shovel and fled, screaming, "No body, it's not here. She was never laid to rest. She's wandering in this village." Through the chaos of rain and wind, Lu stared down at the empty coffin, his heart pounding. He remembered the stranger's warning, if her bones are not found, the spirit will never be freed. But if the body had been missing from the very beginning, then perhaps the bride had never been buried at all. Chapter 13. The Successive Deaths. After the discovery of the empty grave, the whole village plunged into panic. Everyone believed that the ghost bride had never been buried, and that she was wandering the world of the living, seeking replacements. Within just 2 weeks, 3 consecutive deaths occurred. The first case, a young couple in the village, planning to marry at the end of the month, died tragically. They were found lying on the bed, still holding hands, mouths agape, eyes wide open in terror. The horrifying detail was that both of their tongues had been cut out. On the wall, someone had written in blood, "Tonight, I too have a wedding night." The second case. A girl promised to be married far away suddenly vanished the night before her departure. Her family searched everywhere, finally finding her sitting motionless in the village well, long hair covering her face. When pulled out, her body was ice cold, and on her finger was tightly wedged the black silver ring. They had to sever the finger to remove it. The third case. A young man, not yet married, suddenly went insane. He wore a torn bridal veil all day, running around the village, shouting, "She is my wife, do not take her from me." One night, he was found hanging from the banyan tree, the veil covering his face. His body swayed, his mouth stretched into a grotesque grin reaching his ears. The 3 consecutive deaths made the air in the village so heavy it felt ready to explode. Families with daughters hurriedly sent them away. Those with sons of marrying age lived in terror, not daring to hold weddings, nor even step outside at night. One night, as thick fog smothered the village, everyone heard the sound of wedding drums echoing from afar. The pounding drums mixed with shrill horns and clashing gongs. But what froze their blood most was the haunting lullaby. This wedding, this ghostly wed, who is the bride? Who follows me? The song drifted through every alley, circling every rooftop. Some who dared peek outside saw a bridal procession of white figures gliding through the mist. Veils fluttering, but not a single clear face among them. The next morning, another body was found, a girl only 17, not yet betrothed. Her corpse lay in the middle of the alley, dressed in a stark white gown, hollow eyes staring, her lips faintly moving as if still smiling. The whole village understood. The deaths would not stop. The ghost bride had awakened. Chapter 14. The Night of Knocking. After the successive deaths, no villager dared to sleep soundly. Every household barred their doors with heavy wooden beams. Charms hung on the eaves. Yet all knew, the night would come when the ghost bride would seek them out herself. On a crescent moon night, fog thickened, cold winds swept from the cemetery. Dogs howled in long mournful cries. Chickens fluttered wildly in their coops. Amidst the tense silence of the village, a sound arose that froze every soul. Tock, tock, tock? Knocking on the door, slow, heavy, as if from a hand of ice, pounding steadily upon the wood. The first house to be called upon belonged to a young couple preparing for their wedding. The bride-to-be clung to her parents. Trembling, outside, a whisper slithered through the air, chilling to the bone. "Open the door, my bride is inside." The whole family held their breath in terror. The father shouted, begging, "Go away, we will not wed, do not take my daughter." But the knocking persisted. Tock, 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 steady, like the rhythm of wedding drums. The girl could bear it no longer. She covered her ears, sobbing. In her panic, she whispered unconsciously, I am here." At once, the knocking ceased. Silence, suffocating and vast. The family exhaled in relief, thinking the spirit had departed. But moments later, the wooden door slowly split, as if raked by sharp claws from outside. A pale hand slid through the crack, its long, bruised fingers stretching toward the girl. The father, frantic, swung his axe down hard. The hand vanished, the door slammed shut, yet on the wood remained the imprint of 5 blood-red fingers. The village fell into utter dread. The next night, another house was knocked upon. Then another. Night by night, the knocking spread through every home. Rumors grew. If one heard the knocking and foolishly answered, the spirit would drag them away that very night. If they kept silent, it would leave only a bloody handprint upon the door as warning. One stormy night, Lou was hiding inside when he heard tock, tock, tock at his very door. His heart pounded, cold sweat soaking his skin. A voice rose, suffocating, whispering right at his ear. "Lou, open the door? I have chosen you." He clenched his teeth, not daring a word. The knocking went on for hours, then stopped. At dawn, he opened the door, trembling, and upon the wood was stamped a bloody handprint, small and delicate, like that of a young woman. From that day, the villagers knew no one could escape the fateful knocking. Chapter 15. The Bridal Song. After the horrifying nights of knocking, the village sank into utter terror. No one dared step outside after dark, and no one spoke of marriage anymore. But the nightmare did not end there. On the night of the full moon, The moon hung blood red in the sky. Mist poured in from the cemetery, thick and suffocating, covering every roof. At the third watch, the entire village at once heard a song echoing, lilting like a lullaby yet steeped in sorrow. Send the bride forth, bring the bride home, home to the cold grave, home to blood and despair. The song drifted from the cemetery, drawn out, spreading across the fields, reverberating against every tiled roof. The elders shuddered, recognizing it as the bridal procession chant of old, but twisted, distorted, as though 100 souls sang it together in torment. A few bold men crept to the village edge to listen. They froze in horror when they saw, from the cemetery, a bridal procession of white phantoms slowly emerge. Each wore a tattered gown, veil soaked in blood covering their faces, hands clutching wilted bouquets. Drums, horns, and ghostly gongs merged with the song, pounding so fiercely it suffocated. The procession glided through every narrow lane. Each time they passed a house, the song swelled louder, as if calling someone inside by name. Those who dared peek through the cracks saw a bride standing motionless in their yard, hand reaching toward them, lips twitching in a crooked smile. One old woman later recounted, trembling, when the procession passed her home, she clearly heard a voice call, "Old one, come with me." The very next morning, she was found dead in her bed, eyes rolled back, hands still clutching a withered wedding bouquet. On another night, a young man newly betrothed heard the song whispered directly into his ear. The following morning, he had vanished. Only deep footprints remained, leading into the cemetery, ending at a freshly dug grave, its stone smeared with blood. The village drowned in despair. They believed the song was not just a call, but a pact between the living and the dead. Whoever heard their names sung would be taken away as a bride or groom for the vengeful spirit. On every night the song echoed. Another death followed, and until the entire village felt dark and silent as the graveyard. The bridal song would never cease. Chapter 16. The betrayed woman. The successive deaths, the knocking in the night, and the ghostly bridal song left the villagers with no way out. They remembered the words of the strange man, to break it, you must return to the root. Lou was determined to uncover the truth. He went to see Old Tick, the oldest man in the village. Over 100 years of age. His eyes were dim, his hearing fading, but he was still regarded as the keeper of long-buried tales. Sitting before the flickering oil lamp, Old Tick trembled, speaking in a hoarse, broken voice. It began 100 years ago, with a woman named Lean. Lean was the most beautiful girl in the region. Her long, silky hair, skin white as jade, and singing voice enchanted all the young men. She was promised in marriage to the son of the village's most powerful family. A union that brought honor and status. But on the day of her wedding, tragedy struck. As the bridal procession reached the village gates, Lean smiled beneath her veil, hands trembling as she clutched her bouquet. But the moment she stepped into her husband's house, she discovered a cruel truth. The groom had secretly married another woman before her. That marriage had been hidden away. But on the day Lean entered in her gown, she saw it with her own eyes. The other woman, heavy with child, sitting inside the chamber. Humiliation, sorrow, and betrayal crushed her, and she collapsed right before the ancestral altar. It was said she screamed, tore away her veil, blood pouring from her mouth, eyes wide in fury. Before her final breath, Lean cursed, "Whoever weds beneath the red moon shall die. All men who betray, and all women who become brides in this village, shall perish on their wedding day." Her body was hastily buried. But from that day, the first spirits appeared. Every wedding turned to funeral. Every bride met an early death. Every groom was dragged away. Shuddering, Lou asked quietly, "Then, the child in that woman's womb?" Old Tick choked, tears welling in his cloudy eyes. They say, it never drew breath. On the night Lean died, the other woman, in terror, miscarried. That unborn soul followed Lean into death, merging with her curse. That is why, around the ghost bride, there is always the sound of children crying in the night. As his tale ended, the oil lamp suddenly extinguished. In the darkness, Lou heard a faint song whispering right at his ear. "I was betrayed. I died on my wedding day. And you will take my place." He spun around in shock, only to see a white bridal veil floating in the air, dripping blood. each drop falling onto the floor below. Chapter 17. The Blood Curse. After hearing Lean's story, Lu felt as though a crushing weight pressed upon his chest. Every word of her curse echoed like funeral drums, pounding into his soul. He realized this was no ordinary vengeful spirit. It was a ghost fed by blood and betrayal. The more wrongful deaths occurred, the stronger she became. That night, the entire village was shrouded in a suffocating darkness. The moon hung red as blood, its glow spilling over the withered thatched rooftops. Once again, the haunting song rose, but this time clearer, distinct, like a ritual chant. My blood has spilled. One must die in my stead. A crimson wedding. This vow shall never end. As the chant rang out, each household in the village suffered its own horror. Candles on ancestral altars snuffed out. Water in jars turned a thick, bloody red. Children screamed and collapsed unconscious. The villagers, terrified, rushed to the courtyard of the communal house to pray for salvation. And there, beneath the blood moon, they witnessed a sinister ritual manifest. On the damp ground, blood seeped into glowing crimson circles. Within one circle, a wedding gown stood upright by itself, veil draped down, its hem stained and dragging across the earth. No face could be seen beneath it. Yet a voice rang from everywhere at once, piercing into every ear. From now on, your blood shall feed me. Whoever dares to wed beneath the red moon, shall pay with their life. With every word she spoke, the earth cracked open beneath the villagers' feet, blood bubbling upward like a spring. The cries of infants echoed all around, mingling with manic laughter. One man screamed in desperation, "We will cancel every wedding. Please spare us." But at once, his body convulsed violently, his eyes glowing red. Blood poured from his nose, ears, and mouth in torrents. He collapsed into the circle of blood, twitching until still. Before their horrified eyes, the wedding gown trembled, as though it had devoured his soul. From that moment, the villagers knew the curse could not be avoided by abandoning weddings. Simply living in the village meant being bound by it. Then thunder roared across the heavens. The blood moon blazed brighter, casting its light directly onto the courtyard. In that glow, Lean's form materialized, half of her radiant like a goddess, the other half rotting, bones exposed in stark white. Her hollow eyes stared downward, lips twisting into a grotesque grin. The blood curse is sealed. You are all, forever my brides and grooms. Across the village, anguished wails rose, merging with a relentless pounding of ghostly wedding drums from the underworld. Chapter 18. The Family Secret. After the night when the blood curse engulfed the entire village, a heavy gloom lingered everywhere. Lu no longer had any doubts to break free. He had to dig down to the root. And that root lay within the family of the groom from 100 years ago, the most powerful clan in the village. Now withered down to only a few survivors. He went to the home of Old Hack, the fourth-generation descendant of that clan. The wooden house stood alone in the fields, its roof tiles askew, its beams split and cracked. Old Hack, over 80, hunched and dim-eyed, turned pale and trembling the moment Lean's name was spoken. His voice rasped as he confessed, "It was my ancestors who destroyed Lean. That year, to seize land and consolidate power. The Tran family, the groom's clan, arranged a marriage between their eldest son and Lean, the most gifted and beautiful girl of the village. But that son was a libertine, already living with another woman and had gotten her pregnant. On the wedding day, when Lean discovered the truth, she refused to remain silent. In her fury and despair, she tried to flee, but the Tran clan, fearful of disgrace, secretly strangled her in the bridal chamber, then spread the lie that she had taken her own life because of a cursed fate. Her body was hastily buried behind the house. Without incense, without a funeral, the unborn child of the other woman, terrified that night, also perished. From then on, the curse began, and it first descended upon the Tran clan itself. For generations, whenever a wedding took place in the family, someone inevitably died. Old Hack collapsed, burying his face in his hands. The sins of our ancestors remain unwashed to this day. We sowed blood, and for generations we must repay it in blood. Lu sat in stunned silence. At last, he understood why every death circled around weddings. It was the betrayal and blood of the Tran clan that had opened the gate for Lean's spirit to become an immortal ghost bride. At that very moment, from the old house came the sound of a child's wailing. Mournful and piercing, black smoke billowed up from the ancestral altar, twisting into the form of a bride, her wedding gown soaked in blood. Clutching in her arms a stillborn, bluish fetus, her bruised lips moved into a crooked smile. "You are the descendants of the betrayer. You must die first." The entire house shook, roof tiles crashing down in a hail. Lu grabbed Old Hack to flee. But before they could escape, a pale hand shot out from the smoke. Seizing his leg, Lu turned back in terror, and in that instant, he saw clearly the hollow eyes of Lean, the ghost bride, staring straight into him, brimming with a century of unquenched hatred. Chapter 19. The Invisible Children. Ever since escaping Old Hack's house, Lu had been haunted by the image of Lean cradling a bluish, lifeless fetus in her arms. He suddenly realized, for all these years, whenever the spirit appeared, the villagers always heard the faint cries of children in the night. Perhaps those cries were not an illusion at all. One night, Lu ventured into the cemetery, carrying an oil lamp. In the thick, suffocating fog, he heard it, the sound of crying. Faint, weak, yet so sorrowful it tore at the heart. He followed the sound to a cluster of unusually small graves. They were tiny mounds with no headstones. Only a few dry sticks planted into the earth, pressed close together as though hastily buried. Trembling, he lifted his lamp to see clearly. On each mound was imprinted the mark of tiny hands pressed into the wet soil. Still damp, as if just placed there moments ago. A freezing gust swept by, and at once, dozens of children's cries erupted together. From within the fog, he saw small figures crawling toward him, transparent bodies, thin arms and legs, twisted faces. They crawled unsteadily, their mouths calling again and again, "Mother, mother." Lu staggered back in horror, but soon realized, the child spirits did not mean to harm him. They only clung to the hem of his clothes, tugging at his legs, raising their hollow eyes to him, pleading. Then, a lullaby drifted through the fog, sorrowful and broken. "My child, follow me. My child who never came to be. My child, follow me. Forever bound to me." Through the mist, Lean appeared. She wore a blood-soaked wedding gown, her face half beautiful, half decayed. In her arms she held a bluish infant, her hollow eyes fixed on Lu. At once, the invisible children collapsed onto the ground. Sobbing, they crawled toward her, disappearing into the folds of her gown, vanishing as though absorbed into her body. She spoke, her whisper carrying across the entire cemetery. "All those children are mine. Those never born. Those who died in the womb. Those buried alive with the curse. They will follow me forever, until I have a wedding complete." Lu stood frozen, his whole body cold. He understood then. The ghost bride did not only seek a groom, she sought unborn children, binding them to her endless hatred. Before fading into the fog, Lean lifted her hollow eyes to him, her twisted smile widening. "You will be their father." The cries of infants swelled across the cemetery, clinging to Lu all the way back home. From that night on, every time he slept, he dreamed of countless tiny, icy hands clutching at him, calling him by only one name, "Father, Father." Chapter 20. The Sealed Shrine. In the dreams filled with the cries of children, Lu often saw a strange image, a small moss-covered shrine deep in the ancient forest. Beneath the roots of an old tree, at its entrance hung dozens of torn white bridal veils, fluttering in the wind like headless spirits. He told his dream to Old Tick. The elder's face turned pale, his voice trembling. "That is the blood wedding shrine. It was built to seal the bride Lean. But for generations, no one has dared approach it. They say, if the shrine collapses, her spirit will be released." Lu resolved to find it. He and a few young men carried torches, pushing through the gloomy forest. The insects fell silent, the air grew cold and suffocating. At last, they reached a decayed shrine. Its stone walls were cracked, its roof thick with moss, and scattered across the yard were white bones mixed with fallen leaves. The shrine's doors were bound shut with rusted chains, etched with strange symbols drawn in dried black blood. The stench of iron and rot hung heavy. The moment Lu laid his hand on the door, his torch extinguished, cold mist swept in, and in that instant, he clearly heard a woman's whisper at his ear. "Don't open, if you open, you will wed me." But the rusted chains split apart on their own. The door groaning creak, creak, as it swung open. A gust of icy wind burst out, carrying the overwhelming reek of blood. Inside, darkness reigned, broken only by the faint glow of a stone stele at the center. Carved into it were trembling words in blood. "Here lies the seal of the ghost bride. Whoever breaks it, blood shall vow. The wedding shall be reborn." At the stele's base rested a small chest, wrapped in torn talismans. One bold youth pulled away a strip of charm. At once, the ground trembled, and wedding drums thundered from beneath the earth. Pounding in suffocating rhythm, the entire shrine quaked violently. From the chest seeped a trickle of blood, snaking across the ground. With the drumbeats, that familiar voice rose again, haunting and vengeful. "This wedding is not yet done. I am still the bride undone. Whoever opens the shrine shall be forever mine." The group panicked and fled. But Lou stood frozen. He felt it clearly, an invisible gaze watching him from within the darkness. Cold and filled with longing, the shrine shook harder, roof tiles raining down. Just before the door collapsed shut, he heard one final whisper echoing out. "You are the one I have chosen?" A gust of wind swept through, and all the veils hanging at the entrance rose together, fluttering wildly, as though hundreds of invisible brides were waving in greeting. Chapter 21. Blood and the Wedding. The rumor of the sealed shrine spread through the village like fire catching dry straw. Panic consumed everyone, for they believed the seal had been broken and that the ghost bride had found her groom. Yet amidst this terror, a decision arose that left the entire village stunned. A young couple, Kang and Mai, had been betrothed long ago. But their families forbade the marriage because of the curse. After witnessing so many tragic deaths, their resolve only grew stronger. They believed that only a true wedding, held under the blood moon, could shatter the century-old curse. On the night of the full moon, the blood moon, the sky glowed crimson. Fog thickened like smoke, and the wind howled across every roof. While the villagers bolted their doors and hid in fear, Kang and Mai donned their wedding clothes and stepped into the desolate courtyard of the communal house. Mai trembled in her white gown, her face pale, but her gaze steady. Kang held her hand tightly and whispered, "If I die with you. But if we succeed, the whole village will be freed." Suddenly, wedding drums thundered from afar. No one struck them, yet the beats grew louder, heavier, drawing closer. From the cemetery emerged the ghostly bridal procession, dozens of brides in white, their veils torn, their hollow eyes staring. Gliding through the fog, they encircled the courtyard, forming a closed ring. At the circle's center appeared Lean. She wore a wedding gown still whole but soaked in blood, her face half mesmerizing beauty, half rotting horror. Her hollow eyes locked onto Kang, her crooked smile revealing jagged teeth. "You will be my groom." Her voice resounded like thunder. Kang cried out, "No, I have chosen Mai. If you wish to end this curse, let us wed beneath this moon." At his words, blood gushed from the ground, flooding the courtyard red. The ghost brides all raised their voices in song. "Blood shall bind, a graveyard bride. Who survives, belongs to me." Mai knelt, trembling, lighting incense, bowing as though in a true ritual. Kang seized the wedding ring, hands shaking, and slid it onto her finger. But at that instant, Lean shrieked, a piercing scream that shook the heavens and earth. From all directions, pale hands stretched out, clutching at Mai's gown, dragging her toward the cemetery. Kang clung to his bride, blood erupting from the ground and splattering onto her white gown, staining it a vivid crimson. From afar, villagers peeking through cracks in their doors saw only the couple kneeling in the circle of blood, the ghostly procession surrounding them, and above, the blood moon glaring down like the eye of hell. The fated wedding had begun, a marriage not meant for the living. Chapter 22. The Ghostly Procession. The eerie wedding drums thundered, echoing through the mountains and forests. A mournful chant stretched into the night, mingled with the chilling cries of infants. The courtyard had become a living graveyard, crowded with hundreds of brides in white veils, their blood-soaked gowns dragging across the ground. Kang and Mai were trapped in the center. Icy hands gripped their shoulders, forcing them upright, unable to resist. The two were pushed forward, made into the bride and groom of a wedding between the living and the dead. The ghostly procession moved. Their footsteps struck the earth in unison. Thud, 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 a steady rhythm reverberating across the village. Lanterns ignited on their own, swinging above the path, casting a pale green light that illuminated the lifeless faces behind the veils. Villagers hid inside their homes, peeking only through cracks. What they saw froze their blood, the ghost bride gliding past, lifting her veil to reveal a decayed face. Her mouth stretched into a grotesque grin. Each time the procession passed, wooden doors split open, stamped with bloody handprints. Kang clutched Mai's hand, screaming in despair, "Don't let go. Even if we die together." But his cries were drowned by the cacophony. Wedding horns wailed like grieving mothers. Drums and gongs pounded so violently they rattled the skull. The procession marched toward the cemetery behind the mountain. The familiar path had twisted into something unholy. Bamboo poles lined the way, draped with veils and clumps of blood-soaked black hair. The ground was streaked with crimson trails, leading them to a bridal palanquin covered in withered flowers. Lean appeared, seated regally within. She stretched out a pale hand, her whisper spreading everywhere at once. "Groom, step forward." Two shadowy figures clad in black cloaks, phantom groomsmen, dragged Kang before the palanquin. Mai was pulled alongside, forced to stand like an offering. The procession turned, advancing straight into the cemetery. With every step, the earth cracked open, fresh blood gushing forth. Graves on both sides burst apart, skeletal corpses reaching out as if to welcome them. Amid the mournful dirge, Lu, who had followed from afar, stood frozen, watching in horror. The wind shrieked at his ear, carrying a whisper he had heard before. This procession is not yet ending. When it reaches the grave, the blood wedding will begin. Kang and Mai were no longer bride and groom of the living. They had become the centerpiece of an endless ghostly procession, dragging its way through both the realm of the living and the realm of the dead. Chapter 23. The Wedding in the Graveyard. The ghostly procession halted in the heart of the ancient cemetery. The blood-red moon hung above, casting its glow over hundreds of cracked tombs. Dense fog coiled tightly, and the stench of death seeped into the very flesh. At the center stood a wedding altar, assembled from shattered headstones. Upon it lay goblets filled with blood, withered wedding flowers, and black candles burning unsteadily, their smoke spiraling upward into twisted, contorted faces. Kang and Mai were forced to kneel. Both trembled, yet they clutched each other's hands, staring into the nightmare. From her palanquin, the bride Lean stepped forth. Her gown was crimson, drenched in blood, veil covering her face. With every step she took, the ground beneath seeped blood, and the cries of children mingled with grotesque laughter. A spectral chant rose, like that of a shaman from the underworld. One bow to the parents, two bows to the ancestors, three bows to the heavens and earth. The blood wedding begins. At once, corpses burst from their graves, forming two rows, bowing their heads like guests. The wedding drums pounded, but their rhythm was warped, frantic, like the heartbeat of one about to burst. Lean approached the altar. She lifted her veil, revealing a face half angelic, half demonic, one side radiant, the other decayed, crawling with maggots, her hollow eyes fixed on Kang. "Groom, drink this goblet of blood, and you will be mine." A cup brimming with thick blood was presented. Kang trembled, but Mai screamed, "No, you must not drink it." Lean's crooked smile widened as she turned slowly toward Mai. "You are nothing but a sacrifice. This wedding is not for you." Instantly, two phantom bridesmaids seized Mai. Her white gown was torn apart, revealing bloody gashes from ghostly claws. She wept and screamed in despair, her eyes pleading with Kang. Kang struggled, breaking against the icy grip of countless hands restraining him. He shouted with all his might, "Mai, I swear I will save you. Even if I die, I will never let go." His cries merged with the cacophony of ghostly wedding music, infant wails, and the echoing laughter that filled the graveyard. The blood moon glared brighter, illuminating the horrific scene. A wedding of the dead, with a bride who was a century-old spirit, a groom forced from the world of the living, and guests who were restless corpses. The ghostly wedding had begun, and none in the village dared believe they would live to see the dawn. Chapter 24. The True Face. Under the blood moon, Lean stood tall in the cemetery as her blood-soaked veil slowly slipped away. The entire ghostly procession fell silent, leaving only the howling wind and the crackling of shifting soil in the graves. When the last layer of veil slid from her face, the world seemed to freeze. Half of Lean's face remained radiant with beauty, red lips, flawless skin white as jade, the visage that had once ensnared countless hearts. But the other half was rotting, the skull bones stark white, dangling flesh swarming with writhing maggots, her left eye socket hollow and weeping thick. Black blood. The grotesque contrast stunned all who saw it, half enchanting, half nauseating decay. Lean smiled, her crooked grin stretched to her ear, her voice echoing with chilling resonance. This is me, the true face of a betrayed bride. Half love, half hatred, half alive, half dead. She walked slowly toward Kang, each step staining the ground with spreading blood. Around them, the other ghost brides bowed their heads in unison, as if welcoming the groom. Kang trembled but shouted, "What do you want from me?" Lean halted, her hollow eyes piercing him. "I want a complete wedding, a groom who will not betray, a child born into this world. If you accept, I will spare the entire village." Her words made Mai burst into tears. She screamed, "No, he is my husband. You cannot take him." Lean spun toward her, lips curling blood red. "You are nothing but my shadow. You must die, so I can take your place." Immediately, dozens of pale hands burst from the soil, clamping around Mai's legs, dragging her downward. Mai shrieked, struggling in desperation. Kang lunged madly, tearing at the ghostly hands with all his strength. His palms bled as claws raked his flesh, but he refused to let go. In the chaos, Lean began to sing a lullaby, tender yet icy cold. One groom, one bride, one child, the curse fulfilled. The sound reverberated through Kang's skull, making his vision blur as though under a spell. Before his eyes, Lean's ghastly visage transformed, her beauty returned, soft and angelic like a celestial maiden, her eyes shimmering with tears, her lips trembling as if pleading. "Marry me, Kang," she whispered, with just one vow. "I will let Mai live." The graveyard fell into utter silence, leaving only the unbearable weight of the dreadful choice. Chapter 25. The Bridge Between Two Worlds. The moment Kang hesitated at Lean's whisper, the cemetery ground convulsed violently. The ghostly wedding drums thundered, mingled with the cries of newborns and the shrieks of countless buried souls. A massive fissure split open across the circle of blood. From the chasm billowed thick black smoke, carrying with it endless wails. A ghastly green light surged forth, illuminating countless shadowy figures stretching their arms from the abyss below. The gate between the living and the dead had opened. Headless, faceless spirits with twisted bodies clawed their way upward, hollow eyes fixed on the ghostly procession. They wailed, crawling and writhing, merging into a river of corpses. The stench of death pierced straight into the skull, choking Kang and Mai. Lean spread her arms wide, standing at the very edge of the rift, her wedding gown whipping in the wind. Half her face shone with radiant beauty, the other half rotted away, yet both glimmered with supreme ecstasy. At last, the day has come. My soul is no longer bound. This wedding will unite both worlds. At once, the other ghost brides fell to their knees, raising their blood-stained veils skyward in ritual. A lullaby drifted, mournful yet mesmerizing. The gate of death swings wide. The living turn to wraiths. The dead become the brides. Follow me into the deep? Mai was dragged to the chasm's edge, icy hands clutching her gown, pulling her downward. She screamed, crying out Kang's name. Kang fought wildly, tearing her back, his voice roaring in despair. "You want me to wed, but I will only wed Mai. Even if I die, I will never abandon her." His vow echoed through the graveyard. For an instant, a faint white light flickered from the goblet of wedding wine placed on the tomb altar. The flames of the black candles wavered, as though resisting a dark force. Lean shrieked, her crooked smile splitting her face apart. "If you refuse me, then this entire village will be buried with me." The black smoke surged violently. Spirits poured out of the chasm in droves, flooding into the realm of the living, their laughter and wails blending into a symphony of hell. Kang and Mai were trapped in the circle, on one side. The cursed wedding, on the other. The gaping gate between worlds. If it could not be stopped, soon the entire world would become an endless ghostly wedding. Chapter 26. The Choice. Thick black smoke engulfed the cemetery. As lurking spirits crawled and writhed around the blood-stained altar, the cries of infants mingled with the thunder of wedding drums, forming a nightmarish symphony. Kang knelt, clutching Mai's hand. She was being dragged by invisible hands, her body trembling, her once white wedding gown slowly turning crimson as blood surged up from the earth. Lin stood before them, half angel, half demon, her blood-soaked gown whipping in the wind, her hollow eyes fixed on Kang, her voice rising, lilting like a haunting lullaby. Kang, all you need do is drink this wedding wine, and the ceremony will be complete. I will spare the village. Just one vow, and you will be my husband. Her hand reached out, long blood-stained nails trembling, as though yearning for the love that had been stolen from her. Mai screamed, her eyes brimming with tears. Kang, don't. If you wed her, I will lose you forever. Kang looked at his wife, then at the ghost bride, his heart torn in two. On one side, the love he had sworn to protect, on the other, the fate of the entire village. Lin let out a chilling giggle that echoed through the graveyard, making the ground quake. Choose, Kang, marry me, and save them all, or cling to Mai, and see the village buried with me. Kang gasped for breath, cold sweat dripping, his hand tightening around Mai's. He looked straight into Lin's hollow eyes and choked. If I choose you, I betray my vow. If I choose Mai, I doom them all. God, what am I to do? In his despair, he remembered the warning of the strange man. Every curse has a price. It is fed by blood and by love betrayed. If one dares to sacrifice himself, the curse can be broken. Kang shuddered. Could it be? There was only one path? He turned to Mai, pulling her into his arms, whispering, Mai, forgive me. If I give my life, perhaps you will live, she screamed, thrashing against his hold. No, I don't need saving. I only need you with me. But Kang rose, step by heavy step, moving toward the blood-soaked altar, where the goblet of black wine smoked and seethed. The entire host of ghost brides bowed low, chanting their dreadful wedding hymn, welcoming their groom. Lin smiled, her eyes gleaming. Yes, drink it, become my husband. Kang lifted the goblet, his hand trembling, his blood dripping into the thick, dark liquid. Every spirit fell silent, watching. In that moment, his eyes sought Mai's one last time. She sobbed, wailing, Kang, don't leave me. The entire graveyard held its breath. Only one man's choice remained, between love and the curse of blood. Chapter 27. The Blood Wedding. Kang stood before the altar of shattered tombstones, the goblet of pitch-black wine trembling in his hand. The air was thick, suffused with bloody mist. Hundreds of veiled brides knelt low, their mournful lullaby echoing. One groom, one bride, one goblet of blood, one soul to bind. Lin gazed at Kang, half her face bewitchingly beautiful, the other half rotted and twisted in a crooked smile. She whispered, drink, Kang, you will be my husband, and I will release them all. Kang shuddered, then closed his eyes, tilted his head back, and drank it dry. At that very moment, the wedding drums thundered, shaking heaven and earth. Blood overflowed from the goblet, spilling across the cemetery floor, spreading into a blazing river of crimson. Graves on both sides split open, corpses bursting forth, shrieking like mad guests. Lin laughed aloud, her ghastly voice reverberating through the mountains. The blood wedding is complete. At last, I have a true groom. Kang collapsed, his eyes rolling back, blood gushing from his mouth. On his forehead appeared a crimson seal, etched deep like an ancient sigil. Mai screamed, rushing to cradle her husband. She sobbed, no, don't leave me. But Kang was fading. In his eyes, Mai's image blurred, replaced by the radiant figure of Lin, beautiful and gentle, her arms open in welcome. The ghostly procession rose as one, stepping into the circle of blood. The wedding hymn twisted into manic laughter. The cries of infants transformed into jubilant cheers, all merging into a symphony of hell. Lin approached, lifting Kang upright. In her hollow eyes, a blazing red light flared. From this moment, you are my husband, and this entire village is our wedding gift. Blood erupted from the earth, surging to engulf every home, every roof, every hall, drowning the village in a scarlet sea. Screams rang out, only to be smothered by the blaring wedding music. In that dreadful instant, all saw clearly. Kang, clad in a crimson wedding robe, hand in hand with Lean, led the ghostly procession, heading the most blood-soaked wedding ever seen. Mai shrieked in despair, but invisible hands dragged her back, burying her into the ground. She only managed to cry her husband's name one last time before darkness swallowed her whole. The cemetery blazed crimson with blood. That night, the ghostly wedding was sealed. And from then on, the village would never again return to the light. Chapter 28. The Dead Village. The night of the blood wedding ended. Yet the sky still burned red like a raging fire. The moon soaked in blood hanging motionless above. The next morning, no one in the village awoke. Strangers who came upon the place recoiled in terror at the sight. The entire village was silent. Every house shut tight. Wooden doors marked with bloody handprints. No crowing roosters. No barking dogs. No trace of life. When they forced open a rotting door, inside they found only corpses sitting motionless on chairs. Eyes wide open, lips twisted into crooked smiles. Foreheads bearing a crimson seal. The same wedding mark that had appeared on Kang. All the villagers had become guests of the ghostly wedding. At nightfall, the village blazed with hundreds of red lanterns. The sound of wedding drums droned mournfully, mingled with the piercing wail of funeral horns. Those who had died during the day now shuffled out of their homes. Clad in white or crimson wedding garments, eyes vacant, hands clutching wilted bouquets, they marched in procession, heading toward the cemetery, an endless bridal parade. At its center, Kang and Lean led the way. Kang wore a groom's robe soaked in blood, his eyes hollow, his lips frozen in a rigid smile. Lean clung to his arm, her half-beautiful, half-decayed face glowing beneath the moonlight. Beneath her gown, dozens of tiny childlike hands clung and crawled, dragging along with every step. Mai was there too, but she was no longer herself. Her once white bridal gown was stained crimson, her eyes empty, her icy hands gripping a withered bouquet. A crooked smile stretched across her lips, while from the corners of her eyes trickled streams of bloody tears. From afar, witnesses shuddered as they heard the entire village singing in unison. "Take the bride away. Bring the bride home, home to the cold grave, home with the blood bound." From that day on, the village vanished from maps. Travelers passing by saw only a fog-shrouded wasteland. But those who listened carefully beneath the moon claimed to hear wedding drums echoing from afar, accompanied by the cries of newborns. People came to call it the Dead Village, the village that had surrendered all its souls to an eternal ghostly wedding. Chapter 29. Strangers enter the village. Decades passed, and the tale of the dead village was slowly buried beneath the dust of time. Reduced to a legend few dared to mention, the elders still warned their descendants, never set foot in that land. For no living soul remains there. Yet there were those who did not believe. A group of 4 young men and women from the city, curious, thrill-seeking, decided to venture to the cursed land. They wanted to prove it was nothing but superstition, even planning to film and record everything to post online. When they emerged from the old forest, they froze. Before them lay a village drowned in mist. Crooked, decaying roofs sagged, bamboo gates lay broken, and damp dirt roads were streaked with dark stains like dried blood. No birds sang, no breath of life stirred. "It's abandoned, see? Nothing to be scared of," one sneered, raising his camera. But the deeper they went, the heavier the air grew. They found houses still intact, furniture unmoved, chopsticks and bowls laid out as if a feast had been left unfinished. Bloody handprints still marked the walls, dark and unfaded. At the village square, their blood ran cold. Hundreds of red lanterns hung suspended, rotting yet still glowing faintly, casting a sickly light across the courtyard. One girl in the group whispered, trembling, Who lit these lanterns?" No one had time to answer. From afar, the wedding drums suddenly thundered, thump, 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 steady. Echoing through the fog, all 4 paled, their hearts racing. Then, through the dense mist, a procession slowly emerged. They wore tattered wedding garments, faces shrouded in veils, wilted bouquets in their hands. At the front walked the ghostly couple, Kang and Lean, hand in hand. Their eyes hollow yet their twisted smiles radiant. Behind them, the entire village followed, one by one, silent, like the dead still attending an eternal wedding. The young man's camera slipped from his hands, clattering to the ground, still recording. Through the lens, the truth was captured. Hundreds of hollow faces. Grinning mouths stretched wide, empty eyes locked onto the strangers who had trespassed. A lullaby rang out, echoing across the sky. Strangers come. Strangers will be brides. Strangers come. Strangers will be grooms. The group panicked, bolting in every direction, but all around them, veiled brides already stood waiting, blocking every path. The drums pounded faster, like the heartbeat of death itself. And from within the ghostly procession, Lean's laughter rang out, chilling enough to freeze the marrow in their bones. This village has new guests once more. Chapter 30. The Eternal Wedding. The wedding drums thundered throughout the dead village, mingling with shrill horns, clashing cymbals, the cries of infants, and eerie giggles. The air shattered into a cacophony of hell's symphony. The four strangers trembled within the circle of hundreds of veiled brides. They advanced slowly, gowns dragging against the ground with a rasping sound, pale hands outstretched, ready to seize. At the head of the procession walked Kang and Lean. Lean lifted her veil, half her face radiant as an angel, the other half rotting, smiling grotesquely. Her voice floated like a cursed lullaby. From this day forth, whoever steps into the dead village shall be my bride, my groom. As soon as the words fell, the entire village dropped to their knees, raising high their red lanterns. Crimson light flared, casting its glow upon the four intruders. On their foreheads, red wedding marks began to appear, burning bright as though carved with blood. One man screamed in panic, but his eyes rolled back at once, his mouth stretching into a grin that split his face. A girl collapsed, her clothes staining themselves crimson, transforming into a gown of blood. The wedding drums pounded faster. The song resounded. Send the bride, bring the groom. This wedding shall never end. The entire procession moved forward. Red lanterns lined the road, illuminating a bloody path that led to the graveyard. The four strangers no longer resisted, their eyes hollow, feet carrying them into the ranks. From afar, should anyone wander near, they would behold a terrifying sight, an endless ghostly wedding. Day after day, night after night, never ceasing. Brides and grooms change, but Lean and Kang always led, hand in hand, smiling beneath the blood moon. And whenever the crimson moon rose, the cursed hymn echoed once more, drifting like a summons from hell. This wedding, this ghostly vow, whoever comes here, shall never walk out.